From using a fake arm in an exam to scaling over walls like a drunk James Bond, students are endlessly creative and stupid when it comes to trying to cheat at tests. Here are the very worst offenders, starting stupid and building up to unbelievable cases with national consequences. Ew. This student was partway through his medical exam when a surprise inspection team arrived at the scene and conducted a pat-down of everybody in the exam hall. While they didn't immediately catch that miniature device buried inside his ear, the cell phone hidden in this airhead's back pocket did catch their attention. When they realized it was connected to some kind of Bluetooth gadget, the gig was up. The scandal took place in 2022 in Indores Medical College, India, after the desperate student had repeatedly failed his general medicine exam. An investigation was launched and the device was revealed to be a sort of microphone/speaker, allowing somebody on the other side to tell him the answers. Impressively, it had been surgically implanted into his ear by an EMT surgeon. Whether or not they were affiliated with the school, I don't know. Despite earning the examiner's ire and having his answer sheet seized, other students were impressed, with one saying, "I think he's earned his degree." But there are websites emerging weekly that openly target students advertising innovative, high-tech cheating gadgets that don't require surgery. Take this modern masterpiece. A cap equipped with hidden bone conduction headphones advertised online for only $80. Bone conduction headphones can bypass the eardrum entirely, instead transmitting sound vibrations straight through your cheekbones and into the inner ear. And because the cap's Bluetooth enabled, it can connect to your phone so someone can call you up and feed you the answers without anyone else ever knowing. Or at least, that's the idea. In reality, no good examiner is gonna let you stroll in with your Obey cap on trying to look cool. But in September 2021, 10 students did attempt to cheat using flip-flops.
What?
Yep, they were rigged with Bluetooth devices stuffed inside the soles that could receive calls and transmit them to tiny receivers in their ears. The kicker? They cost 600,000 rupees. That's $6,800. Excuse me? When I was a student, I could barely afford a pot noodle. Have you ever risked your life to pass an exam? Because in Bihar, India, 2015, students and some parents took cheating to all new heights. And I mean that literally. This has to be the most unabashed, brave, and simultaneously dumb method of cheating ever caught on camera. This bunch of Spider-Man wannabes were scaling the walls of this school in broad daylight. They hand cheat sheets through the windows while officials, police, and even the evening news watched the events unfold. Holy cow. Some coppers were even accused of taking bribes to look the other way. The cost? Over 700 students were expelled for blatant cheating and nearly 300 parents arrested in total, with punishments ranging from fines of 2,000 rupees, or $36, to jail time. Not the most gangster way to find yourself in a cell. Imagine explaining, "Yeah, I was climbing a wall to give my pal a copy of Pythagoras' theorem," to the member of the mob you're bunking with. Swag. Sure, the footage is funny, but the desperation is real. In India, parents put incredible amounts of pressure on their children to do well academically, so it's really no wonder students and parents alike are risking life and limb for a cheat sheet. Still, I think the phrase "climbing the ladder of success" might have been taken a little too literal here. In 2019, one tech-savvy Canadian student spilled the beans about a genius scheme he'd thought up in high school. He'd hollowed out 2 pins and packed them with minuscule batteries and a vibrator the size of a pinky nail. Why? So he could give one to his buddy and they could use them to send Morse code signals to each other across the room. A few clicks and boom, message sent. Incredibly, it did work. For 2 years anyway. Only these fools had forgotten the teeny tiniest detail. Vibrators make noise. Yep, one day his friend put his pen on the desk just as it started buzzing, and the noise was so loud that the students were busted instantly. Now here's the kicker. As if learning every dot and dash wasn't enough, neither student even needed to cheat. With a near-perfect grade point average of 3.9 out of 4 already top of the class, they did it because they were bored. Have you ever been doing so well in school that you wondered, how can I completely jeopardize my grades? No, me neither. Despite having the academic offense stamped on their transcripts, this student was confident it wouldn't hurt their job prospects. According to him, he could just lie and say it was a misunderstanding. Yeah, what an idiot. This silly student thought he could get away with a brazen water bottle trick. AKA, they carefully created a cheat sheet disguised as a nutrition label, then slapped it on the outside of the bottle in plain sight. For 20 minutes, a teaching assistant watched him suspiciously play spin the bottle like his life depended on it before yanking it off him, and yikes! Cheat sheet exposed. 10 out of 10 for creativity, 0 out of 10 for execution. At least this guy was clever enough to write his notes on the inside of the label before sticking it back on. But if you thought that was dim-witted, wait until you hear about this next genius, because nothing says future lawyer like being caught cheating in a statute book. Yep, you heard that right. In 2017, one guilty law student from London thought it a brilliant idea to smuggle 24 pages of invisible ink notes into an exam inside a book of law. The irony. Sure, the exam allowed textbooks, but not the UV torch she pulled out of her pocket. One flash of light and poof, those unauthorized notes lit up as brightly as her chances of ever becoming a judge dimmed. How a wannabe lawyer believed she'd get away with such an obvious tactic is a mystery to me. Seen by fellow students and the invigilator, she was busted on the spot. A fail slapped on all her modules and the book retained for evidence. And get this, she still had the audacity to appeal to the UK's Office of the Independent Adjudicator on the grounds of unfair penalty. Shock, she lost the case. Womp womp. But at least she tried to be clever. Another female student stayed old school with the paper and pens. She just chose a very questionable hiding place, scribbling notes all over her thighs and hiding them with her skirt. Sure, that might have fooled some, except nothing screams totally innocent about constantly lifting your skirt mid-test while the examiner is watching. This dummy was caught quickly. And let's just hope that wasn't Sharpie, because otherwise you're on bad terms with Teach and you've turned yourself into a human whiteboard. Oh wait, that's exactly what this kid did. A since-deleted Redditor posted back in 2019 about how their teacher mother-in-law saw a dumbass who'd scribbled all his notes upside down on his stomach in permanent ink. The nervous student was caught when he started sweating through his clothing and lifted his shirt up to read the notes. Man, just taking the fail would have been so much less embarrassing at this point. Here's another law student who decided that writing notes on paper was far too mainstream. Instead, he went full Picasso on pens. Using a needle, this kid painstakingly etched minuscule notes onto 11 pens and hid them in his shirt pocket, each carefully numbered for different lessons. Damn, that's some commitment. And the class? Oh, just criminal procedure law? Come on, that's like plagiarizing a novel for a creative writing class. Back in 2017, Professor Yolanda De Lucci had confiscated the pens from one of her students at the University of Malaga. 2 years later, she shared a snap of the illegal study aid on Twitter. The culprit himself said all he had to do was swap out the graphite lead of a mechanical pencil with a needle, and from there on it was super easy. In fact, someone even responded with their own creations. Sadly, the impressive craftsmanship didn't change the fact he was still busted after being spotted changing his pen too many times and failed the class. Incriminated! He had to repeat the entire year of his course again, plus other students were furious at him, so the school began getting anonymous tip-offs about other cheaters. Yep, if you hadn't guessed by now, cheating isn't as rare as you might think. According to the International Center for Academic Integrity, a whopping 60% of university students have admitted to cheating in some form. Crazy, right? And it's not just a modern thing. Way back in Imperial China, as early as 605 AD, kids were getting real creative. The highest aspiring students back then weren't taking your average SAT tests. No, they were faced with the legendary Kiju exams, which decided who was selected to be the Empire's state officials. So no pressure then. The curriculum focused on Confucian classics, military strategy, and a load more interesting stuff like taxation. So students took it upon themselves to learn the art of mastering the ultimate cheat sheet. Think tiny scrolls hidden in robes written with near microscopic flyhead script and entire suits of underwear covered in text that students would sneak peeks at. Even steamed buns sometimes doubled as edible hiding places for cheat sheets. That's a whole new take on digesting your homework. One piece of yellowing silk kept in Nanjing Museum is about 6 by 29 inches, crammed with not one, not two, but 11 essays in teeny tiny handwriting, and would have been folded into intricate origami to smuggle into an exam. Flip it over and bam, just one single Confucian character. Yi, meaning righteousness. So at least they had a sense of humor. The consequences of getting caught cheating the Kiju exams was notoriously more severe than having to retake the year though. One of the most infamous cases is that of Tang Yen, a famed poet and artist, and his pal Zhu Jing. In 1499, the pair allegedly bribed an official, Chang Minxing, for answers prior to taking the imperial exam. How were they busted? Well, while one question left every other student utterly stumped, this pair suspiciously aced their answers. Rather than being graciously accepted into court as high-ranking officials, though, they were subjected to brutal interrogation until they confessed. Then they were stripped of their qualifications and ultimately exiled. That sucks. And while Tang Yen went on to create esteemed art and poetry in solitude, Zhu Jing spent the rest of his life in misery waiting for a pardon before dying aged just 35. Moral of the story? Don't sweet-talk your examiner the morning before the imperial exams. Back to modern day, this not-so-dynamic duo at the University of Kentucky hatched the opposite of an elaborate plan to cheat. In 2017, Henry Lynch II and Troy Kippeth were caught literally crawling through the air ducts to steal exam papers. Mission impossible, minus the possible. At around 2 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, 21-year-old Lynch entered his school building's ceiling ducts, dropped into his statistics professor, Mr. Kane's classroom, unlocked the door for his buddy, and they got to work. The perfect crime, right? Wrong. The pair had forgotten to check one thing: whether Kane was still around. Within minutes, said teacher returned to find his office door blocked and threatened to call the cops. Turns out he'd been working late. The two thieves immediately burst out of the room like foxes caught in a dumpster, allowing Kane to get a good look at their faces. Incredible. To make it worse, Lynch later bragged that he'd pulled this exact stunt earlier on in the semester and gotten away with it. Considering Tom Cruise managed to get away with 8 impossible missions, I don't think he would have been impressed by these two. The duo were charged with third-degree felony burglary charges, which, in my opinion, seems kinda harsh. A fellow student agreed with me, arguing he should have just been forced to take the exam 3 times. But honestly, for a statistics paper, that might have been a nastier punishment. So we've covered students cheating for themselves, but what about a student cheating for dozens of strangers? Enter Wang Likun, the 27-year-old Chinese grad student living in Kyoto, Japan, who thought he was running some sort of Ocean's 11 level operation. In May 2025, Wang was arrested for the 3rd time in 6 months. His crime? A bold attempt to outwit Japan's ultra-competitive TOEIC exams, the gold standard for English language testing. He'd already been nabbed for impersonating a test taker in order to cheat for them back in February and March, but this time he decided to take it up a notch. Wang had tried to infiltrate an exam hall wearing smart glasses with inbuilt cameras and a face mask rigged with a hidden antenna and a 1.5-inch Bluetooth mic in order to mumble answers to other crooked test takers. But after a woman sitting beside him complained about being disturbed by a noise, examiners got suspicious and ultimately discovered Wang's illicit method. His subsequent arrest triggered a sweeping investigation uncovering a thriving underground cheating ring that nobody had seen coming. See, Wang wasn't working solo. Prior to the exam, he'd been part of a Chinese collective that advertised cheating services to struggling students on the internet. A website ran by the collective had a QR code on it, which, when scanned, gave access to an encrypted messaging app. From there, wannabe cheats could chat with representatives and ultimately choose to send them money in return for one of two cheating services. In the first, more expensive option, students paid $8,200 for somebody to impersonate them taking the test. In the second option, they could pay about half that to be enrolled into the Smart Glasses earphone scheme. A digital trail of messages going back 2 years showed Wang telling the enrolled students how to use tiny earpieces and relay devices and providing a 40-minute video with further instructions. He even ensured that students would be within Bluetooth range of his answer feeding by giving them his address. See, Japan's seat assigning system places students that live near each other into the same exam halls. So after registering with an address close to Wang's, they'd all get into the same hall. Then he would snap pics of the tests using his glasses and send them over to accomplices outside the hall so they could tell him the correct answers, which he'd relay to the students. It was eventually revealed that Wang had attempted to help over 800 people pass the test, with many caught out by stupidly listing his exact home address instead of one close by. The consequences were severe. Every candidate involved got banned from taking the test for 5 years and their scores were retroactively erased. Japanese nationals were furious, and the incident sparked a wave of xenophobic comments towards Chinese students in Japan, leaving a sour aftertaste to this already bitter story. Though at the time of making this video, Wang hasn't been sentenced, it's hard to imagine he'll be getting off lightly. As for the mysterious cheating collective, as far as I'm aware, they remain at large. I wouldn't recommend getting in touch. Curious about the top cheating tools you could, but definitely shouldn't pick up on Amazon? The most common is Shock. Also, the cheapest, retractable ballpoint pens with pull-out sheets you can scrawl notes on, starting at just $4.99. You can even find some pre-printed with the periodic table for those chemistry conundrums. Then there's this clever calculator with a hidden twist. It features an erasable writing tablet inside the case that can vanish when locked. Another sneaky high-tech contender is this scanning pen with AI live interpretation, which can instantly read and translate text from exam papers or notes. A feature meant for language learning, but easily misused. And for a more advanced option, some students opt for programmable scientific calculators for around $70, like the Casio FX9860G, which includes a little-known e-activity feature. While Amazon doesn't detail its full capabilities, a quick Google search unearths a multitude of tutorials showing how to preload notes and formulas into the calculator's memory using simple code. Once loaded on, you can consult them later during your exam and nobody will be any the wiser. Another popular item you should remember from earlier is Kikkerland's invisible ink pen with a built-in UV torch. It looks remarkably like your average biro, but lets you write notes visible only under the light. Of course, this does rely on you not being an obvious buffoon and shining it in full view of the examiner. But for anyone who's really serious about cheating, researching cheating methods, there's Kumax's Mini Hidden Spy headset. At just $45, this sneaky product consists of a skin-colored induction loop to be worn under your collar, which sends a wireless signal to a miniature earpiece also included. When plugged into a hidden mobile device, the loop allows hands-free listening to pre-recorded notes during exams. The downside, of course, is you have to actually plug this thing into your phone, so it could be more subtle, but then you're not thinking of actually trying this now, are you? Here's a question. Why study for the SAT when you can just hire a 19-year-old with a fake ID and a God complex to do it for you? Back in 2008, a group of Long Island high schoolers were arrested after trying to pull off a particularly audacious academic hustle. Their secret weapon? Nothing high-tech this time. Meet Sam Escherhoff, the academic gun for hire who turned cheating test scores into a business, one identity theft at a time. Sam's business model was simple. The student from Great Neck North High School was working via word of mouth, and for just a couple of $1,000, he'd stroll into an SAT testing center under someone else's name, score in the 97th percentile, and head home. All the while, the real student was sat at home watching Be Amazed in bed. The loophole Sam had found: America's Educational Testing Service allows students to take tests at any center anywhere across the country. All you need is a high school ID. And all that is a photo of the student's face with a name and date of birth. So Sam simply copied the format of his own high school ID using his young clients' names and date of births with a picture of his own face. Then he walked into testing centers that weren't local to the students, where the examiners wouldn't know what they actually looked like, and took the tests instead of them. And it worked. On one occasion, post-graduation, he even flew home from college to take the SAT twice in one weekend, posing as different students each time. Indeed, he kept the whole thing up for nearly 3 years and consistently scored in the 97th percentile or higher because he was just that good. However, hubris has a habit of catching up with us. Teachers noticed that students who could barely spell college were suddenly scoring like little Einsteins. Eyebrows and red flags were raised. The school's faculty nailed down 6 students whose GPAs didn't match their scores and who'd taken the SAT at a different testing center than their local. After they were questioned by police, they confessed to paying Sam, and it was game over. The illicit cheat dealer was arrested and pulled from his home where he was living with his parents. Dun dun dun! But when confronted, he didn't exactly grovel. On a 60 Minutes interview in 2012, Sam proudly admitted to impersonating other students around 20 times and even claimed he was saving lives. Okay, well, I don't think your friendly neighborhood firefighter accepts tips of $1,100. Faced with charges of fraud and criminal impersonation, Sam was forced to withdraw from university. But the twist? He managed to avoid jail time by accepting a plea deal which saw him, tutoring low-income students for their SATs. Yeesh, you can't deny that's some pretty ironic karma. You never really want to hear the words Harvard and cheating in the same sentence, but have you ever wondered why arguably the most prestigious university in the US rolled out its honor code back in 2015? The answer goes back to 2012 when the biggest scandal in Ivy League history unraveled. Over 125 students were busted for producing near-identical answers on a final exam. The exam was take-home, open book, open internet. Basically, you could look at whatever the hell you wanted as long as you followed one simple rule: no collaboration. And for which class was this exam? Guess. No, not quantum mechanics, not rocket science. Government 1310, Introduction to Congress. Well, that explains a lot. The fallout was monumental. Some students were failed, others suspended, athletes were banned from competing, and perhaps most significantly, Harvard was forced to launch its shiny new honor code 2 years later, complete with its own event during freshman orientation. The pledge? To not cheat. Revolutionary. But take a minute to think about the stupidest aspect of all this. It was an open book take-home exam. You could literally use the internet. So how dumb are you to still get caught cheating?
Open book, take home final, and you're cheating?
You can use the internet.
That's like taking HGH to play a ping pong game. That makes no sense.
In the end, half of the students under investigation were forced to withdraw in the wake of the scandal. That's about 1% of the entire Harvard undergraduate body at the time. How embarrassing. Okay, let's go back to the parents for a second. Specifically, their sometimes questionable parenting methods.
You doctor yet?
No, Dad, I'm 12.
Talk to me when you doctor.
Case in point, a few years ago during an AP exam, one poor kid panicked midway through, bolted to the toilet, and actually called his dad, who was a teacher at the school, begging for help. And what did his dad do? Reported him on the spot. Damn, talk about tough love. In 2016, 3 ambitious female medical students at a university in Bangkok were caught wearing glasses with embedded cameras like the ones Wang Likun wore. Just like Wang's, these high-tech specs snapped pictures of the exam papers and sent them to someone on the outside who then looked up the answers and sent them back. Only this guy sent them straight to a smartwatch on each student's wrist. Apparently, they thought they were being clever, but the investigators soon started noticing papers being studied a little too intently, heads tilted at funny angles, and watches flashing suspiciously. Safe to say, the gadgets were confiscated and the students blacklisted without being allowed to resit. Ouch. Turns out they'd paid nearly 800,000 baht, or $24,000 each, for the opportunity. Seriously, where are all these students getting the money from? The scandal sparked serious calls for a change in exam prosecution laws. In some cases in Thailand, cheating has become so rampant that security methods include installing overhead cameras in exam rooms and forcing students to wear anti-cheating hats that can come in pretty much any form they choose. On the face of it, this silly headwear works like blinders on horses, blocking the students' peripheral vision to prevent them from peeking at each other's sheets. In reality, I don't know, looks like a pretty good hiding place for a cheat sheet to me. And funnily enough, just a year later, the Thai film Bad Genius blew up about a female student creating a cheating empire. Coincidence? I think not. Although my favorite cheating scene is undoubtedly this from the Japanese drama Gokusen, featuring absurd methods like scribbling notes on the underside of an eye patch and concealing them inside a dreadlock. You'd think this is stranger than fiction, but we know better. One thing it didn't include, though, is one of these bad boys. Yes, that is a smartwatch that can project anything you want onto yourself, including exam notes. Developed by LumiWatch, it's just a proof of concept for now, but you'd even be able to control it like a computer using your arm as a touchscreen. Not exactly subtle, but you just know some doofus would give it a go. Not that students are the only idiots caught cheating. Then 57-year-old high school tuition principal Ho Yuan Ni fled Singapore after being caught running an intricate tutor-student cheating hustle. She and 3 of her tutors had been paid $6,100 each by a Chinese man to help 6 Chinese students pass their GCE exams back in 2016. Long story short, their method was similar to Wang Likun, except instead of using glasses, one tutor inside the exam hall was wearing a hidden camera phone strapped to her chest. An idea which, funnily enough, has a similar scene in Gokusen. But for all this effort, the invigilator heard unusual noises coming from one of the students' clothes, and boom, the not-so-master plan flopped within minutes. The only thing is, Po wasn't ready to surrender that easily. After a year-long trial where she was convicted of 27 counts of fraud and sentenced to 4 years in prison, she fled the country and hasn't been seen since. Where is she now? Who knows? Back in 2003, 6 students from the University of Maryland went for a more old-school tactic, smuggling their cell phones into the exam hall and texting their friends for answers. They hadn't banked on their professors ensnaring them in a clever trap. See, those friends on the outside would look up the exam answer key, which was available online, and text the answers back into the room. Little did they know the students' professors had sneakily uploaded a fake answer key with bogus answers. So when exam day came around, they sat back, graded the tests, and watched to see which students had fallen for it. After being confronted, the 6 confessed and failed the class. But hey, at least they didn't try anything as objectively brain-dead as this guy who was caught using his phone under the desk with his arm tucked into his jacket and his sleeve resting on top. I mean, seriously, at least have a bit more creativity like this girl. Yes, that is a fake arm. But texting your pal is one thing, being part of the United States' biggest ever university admissions scam is entirely another. Enter Operation Varsity Blues, the widespread criminal scheme implicating big Hollywood names like Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, who found themselves plastered with federal charges after going through illicit means to get their kids into college. Spearheaded by life coach William Rixinger, the scandal is so ridiculous it sounds like it was named after a bad 90s sports movie. Spoiler, it was. So here's the deal. Back in 2014, Singer founded a nonprofit organization called Key Worldwide, which claimed to help disadvantaged students around the world. The reality? It was nothing but a slush fund through which payments could be funneled through as charity donations. Singer would pocket some of this and use the rest to bribe those who could get him the results he guaranteed. This was through two possible ways: manipulating exam results or faking the sporting abilities of students to secure them special treatment. Some students were blissfully unaware of the whole process, while others knew perfectly well their SATs were going to be corrected or quietly swapped out by proctors on Mummy's payroll. Heck, some were even flown to special testing sites where the proctor literally sat there correcting their exams in front of them. Not to mention the fake athletic profiles. Yes, these are actual photoshopped images that came to light in the scandal. No, I don't know how anyone fell for it either. Actress Lori Loughlin's daughter, Olivia Giannulli, was made to pose on a rowing machine, and the photos sent through to Singer to create an athletic profile for her, despite Giannulli never having rowed a boat in her life. Indeed, her parents paid over $500,000 to get both her and her sister into the University of Southern California. And Huffman's daughter? Her SAT score magically jumped 400 points after her mother paid a proctor $15,000, which is probably less than she spends on her weekly food shop. But it all began to unravel when investigators working on an entirely different case received a tip from a financial executive. He claimed a sports coach from Yale University asked the exec for a bribe to get his daughter into the Ivy League school and agreed to wear a recording device and meet him. Sure enough, the FBI caught the sports coach who spilled the beans on more of his co-conspirators and led them straight to Singer, who also cooperated to blow the lid off the scheme. Then in 2019, the scandal was made public and Singer pled guilty to a host of charges including conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and obstruction of justice. Despite facing a sentence of 3.5 years, Singer eventually served just 16 months and was released in August 2024. Ultimately, over 50 people were indicted in the cheating scandal, and most of the students involved were shown the door by their colleges. As for Huffman, she got landed with 14 days in prison, 250 hours of community service, and a $30,000 fine. Loughlin scored 2 months prison time, 100 hours of community service, and a $150,000 fine, while her husband received 5 months and a $250,000 fine. So all in all, I'd say it firmly wasn't worth it. Okay, we've managed to avoid it so far, but it's time to talk about the student that has managed to sneak into every lecture theater and seminar across the globe for the last few years: ChatGPT. Just a few weeks after OpenAI launched its charming little chatbot for research use in 2022, professors up and down the country began to notice something strange. Students' essay writing styles were completely changing. Well, after running them through ChatGPT's self-snitching AI detector, thousands ended up being flagged as written by the software. One professor recollected an essay he'd graded as being really well written wrong. It included bizarre facts he'd never mentioned in class and more than one nonsensical claim that would have made even Wikipedia suspicious. Another student in the UK had turned to AI to help her write an essay but landed herself in front of an academic misconduct panel, resulting in a big fat 0 on one of her modules. In fact, figures obtained by the UK student newspaper The Tab showed that in 2023, 377 university students faced a probe for cheating on their coursework, with at least 146 being found guilty across the country. I wonder how many students weren't. One professor suspected foul play and began throwing rogue words like Frankenstein and banana into his essay prompts written in tiny white font. When students plugged the question into ChatGPT, they unknowingly pasted this text too, and it confidently spouted back anecdotes referencing fictional fruit monsters, making it stupidly easy for teachers to identify which kids weren't writing their own essays. And take a look at this graph. See that huge dip around the end of May? That's the drop in site traffic during the months of June and July, aka summer break in the US. I think we can equate that y-axis to time students spent not using their brains. And I don't mean that in the academic sense. What's the dumbest or most creative cheating method you've ever witnessed, or maybe even tried? Let me know down below and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.